invoke auspiciousness for whatever we are doing, we'll say or discuss today. Om Jnanatirmirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunvalitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yata Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Turubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivashari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namam Vishnupadaya, Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine, Namaste Saraswati Deve, Gauravani Pracharine, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachadishatarine. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So welcome, dear devotees, those who have just joined us to today's session. The Miraculous Sri Caitanya Charitamrita Printing Marathon. Now, there may be some devotees who have a question in their mind. We have decided for 6 days to facilitate our memories of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to develop and enhance our consciousness for the upcoming Gaur Purnima festival. But why has the organizers for the 6-day event, on the first day talking about the historical impact of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and on the second day talking about the miraculous Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Printing Marathon? Wouldn't it have been better if the organizers arranged for some topics to be spoken on Gaura Leela? There's so many pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Why have they selected these 2 topics for the first 2 days? I'm not sure if that question crossed any of your minds. It may have, but I thought I'll start off today's session to maybe just touch on why. And it's significant. It's important. The Lord has His plan. And anyone who understands the Lord's plan and makes his life one with the Lord's plan, that person's life becomes completely successful. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has appeared He has a plan. And if we can understand what that plan of Mahaprabhu is, we can align our lives with that plan, and everything is perfect. So there's two quotations of Srila Prabhupada I have on the screen. Prabhupada says, so far you're thinking about things and making so many plans. That is all right. But our first business is Krishna's plan. That is the only plan. And no matter how many schemes we employ to adjust things in this material world, if they have no solid basis in Krishna's plan, they remain merely dreams of phantasmagoria. So in this Krishna consciousness movement, I am training boys and girls all over the world how to act nicely by practically serving Krishna in their everyday lives. That is more important than trying for something which I may not like to do, but which I may like to do, but will never happen. This is a letter Srila Prabhupada wrote on 10th April 1972. And then there's a second statement. Our plan should be to accept Krishna's plan. That's all. Approved, authorized plan. That is very easy. Take any words of Krishna. It is very easy. Srila Prabhupada's morning walk, Tehran, August 12, 1976. So dear devotees, what is Lord Chaitanya's plan? That in one sense is an open secret. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's plan is to take as many souls from this Kali Yuga and give them Krishna Prem. And through this Krishna Prem, they will achieve the highest goal and then return back to the highest abode, Goloka Vrindavan, when they finished. So this is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's plan. And his plan was to achieve this by Sankirtan. And Prabhupada has taught us there's two types of Sankirtan. The first is the Sankirtan that comes with the small Mridanga, the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra with the small Mridanga. And the sound vibration of the Mahamantra penetrates for some distance, not very far, but some distance from where the Sankirtan is going on. And then there is the Brihat Mridanga, the big Mridanga. And that Mridanga is the printing press. Through the printing press, Prabhupada says, Sankirtan is not only chanting the mantra, but anything that is talks about Krishna and his pure devotees, that is Sankirtan. So by means of the big Mridanga, this Sankirtan can spread far and wide. That is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's plan. So I want to share something else. Just bear with me. Why is it not showing? 1 minute. Srila Prabhupada once gave a very beautiful lecture in 1972. I hope you will be able to hear this. In this lecture, Prabhupada talks about what is the meaning of love.
Bhajan, those who are engaged in devotion, what kind of devotion? Priti Purvakam, with love and affection. One who is engaged in devotional service of the Lord, in love and devotion. What is the symptom of love? Love. The symptom, the prime symptom, most important symptom of love is that the devotee wants to see that his Lord's name, fame, etc. become widespread. He wants to see that my Lord's name be known everywhere. This is love. If I love somebody, I want to see that his glories are spread all over the world. And Krishna also says in the Bhagavad Gita, Nacha tasmat manusyeshu kaschit me priyatirtam. Anyone who preaches his glories, nobody is dearer to him than that person. Everything is there in the Bhagavad Gita.
Could you all hear that well?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. So in this lecture in New Vrindavan in September 1972, Srila Prabhupada says something very important. And he asks this most important question. What is the main symptom of love? What is a primary symptom of love? What is the most important symptom of love? This is what Gaur Purnima is all about. We remember Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We express our love for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We show our love for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Prabhupada is saying, what is the best way to express that love? The best way is to glorify the Lord. To glorify the Lord. And to spread his glories. So we shall see how Srila Prabhupada practically demonstrated that through Sri Caitanya Charitamrita. So this is one of the reasons. And the second reason is also by hearing more and more about these pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu during Srila Prabhupada's era, we will become encouraged ourselves to take up the mission to spread the glories of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Does it make sense to you all why we are trying to make this effort? And through today's session, we are hoping that when we, as we read about this, Prabhupada's endeavor, we can get an idea of what real love is. Once my Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj, told me personally, and he told me this in the context of reading and studying Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. He told me that you cannot know Srila Prabhupada without knowing the history of ISKCON. That means Prabhupada gave his life in starting and growing and maintaining the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. If we have not made an attempt to study Srila Prabhupada's life during this period, we will not really know Srila Prabhupada as complete. No one obviously can know Srila Prabhupada completely, but as much as is available to us. Srila Prabhupada, he went to the West at an advanced stage. He says he did not know how long he will live. So Srila Prabhupada wanted to give the world these Vedic literatures. And he had doubts whether he would live to complete the Srimad Bhagavatam and even get to the 10th canto. And having this in mind, he published the Krishna book. And in the same way, he did not know whether he will have sufficient time to complete Sri Caitanya Charitamrita. So he published the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. So in the same way, if we want to know Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we have to study the life and teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as given in the most authoritative, the most widely recognized biography of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which is Sri Caitanya Charitamrita. So yesterday we spoke about Sri Caitanya Charitamrita, how it was written by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, and it was completed in 1614. And then we spoke about the first wave. So I just want to briefly talk about how Sri Caitanya Charitamrita came to the West. It's a very interesting journey. One very interesting aspect of the history of Sri Caitanya Charitamrita, how it almost got lost forever. And that pastime was the 6 Goswamis were in Vrindavan. And then Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was also in Vrindavan. And Kaviraj Goswami had written Sri Caitanya Charitamrita. So the Goswamis, they wanted the writings of all of the great acharyas and the Goswamis to be taken to Bengal. So they gave this responsibility to take the Vaishnava literatures to Bengal to 3 great devotees who became great acharyas: Srinivas Acharya, Narottam Das Thakur, and Sri Narottam Das Thakur. So the 3 of them, they put all of the literatures, including the Sri Caitanya Charitamrita, in a cart. They took the armed guards and they set off for Bengal. After some time, some days, they took rest in the evening, they parked their chariots. But at that point in time, when they got up in the morning, they were shocked. They were shocked because someone had come in the middle of the night and had stolen all of the literatures. And this person who had stolen the literatures, he was a dacoit who an astrologer had said that there's a party who have a great treasure. And this dacoit, not knowing what this treasure was about, he went and stole these trunks of books. But anyway, it's a long story. But Srinivas Acharya, he went into this kingdom in which the dacoit was the predominant figure. And he preached there. And with the outcome that this dacoit became his disciple. And when this dacoit became his disciple, he asked his guru what he can give the guru as Guru Dakshin. And Srinivas Acharya told him that we had this great treasure which has been stolen. And if you can find it, that will be a great service. And then this dacoit revealed the entire story. He took Srinivas Acharya to where the trunks of books were, and he returned it. At one point in time, when the books were lost and they were frantically looking everywhere and couldn't find it, everyone became completely devastated. And news even reached Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami that the Sri Caitanya Charitamrita, which he had written, which there was no other copy of, could be lost. But the Lord had his plan, and Sri Caitanya Charitamrita also was born. So in 1965, Srila Prabhupada set off for the West on the order of his Guru Maharaj to preach Krishna consciousness in the Western speaking world. And accompanying Srila Prabhupada was Sri Caitanya Charitamrita. And Prabhupada writes on 10th of September 1965 in his Jaluduta diary, "Today the ship is plying very smoothly. I feel today better." This is after Srila Prabhupada had suffered a heart attack. But I am feeling separation from Sri Vrindavan and my Lord Sri Govinda, Gopinath, Radha Damodar. My only solace is Sri Caitanya Charitamrita, in which I am tasting the nectarian of Lord Chaitanya's Leela. I have left Bharata Bhumi just to execute the order of Sri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati in pursuance of Lord Chaitanya's order. I have no qualification, but have taken up the risk just to carry out the order of His divine grace. I depend fully on their mercy, so far away from Vrindavan. So Sri Caitanya Charitamrita is making its way into the Western world. Almost 500 years after the disappearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and just less than, just more than 400 years. This Sri Caitanya Charitamrita. So Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita arrived in the West, and Srila Prabhupada started his mission. And Srila Prabhupada was trying to get many of his aspects of his preaching mission in place. But Srila Prabhupada's main mission, as is explained in the 7 purposes of ISKCON, was the printing and publication of Krishna conscious literature. And Srila Prabhupada had a deep desire within his heart to give the world the full Sri Caitanya Charitamrita. I've mentioned before that Srila Prabhupada, not being sure of whether he'll succeed in giving the world Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, he gave the world, or he printed the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. But still that desire was there. Then around mid-1973, after many, many years of publishing so many books, Srila Prabhupada decided that he was going to start translating Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is 11,519 verses. Srimad Bhagavatam is 18,000 verses. Srila Prabhupada had spent many years working on Srimad Bhagavatam. And at a point in time, Srila Prabhupada had reached around I think it was the 4th canto. But in 1973, Srila Prabhupada dedicated his time towards translation of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. And this is the first miracle we see, the empowerment, the Shakti that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu invested in Srila Prabhupada. And in the matter of only 18 months, Srila Prabhupada completed the entire Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita on the occasion of Ram Ekadasi on 10th of November, 1974. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita was completed. And what makes this feat of Srila Prabhupada even more incredible, it was during a time when he was intensely engaged in many affairs of management while constantly traveling. There is a website called Vanipedia, and in there we can get the timeline of Srila Prabhupada's life. So I went today and I looked at what Srila Prabhupada was doing during 1973 and 1974. And I was astounded how much of traveling Srila Prabhupada had done during that period, while at the same time completing the translation of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. And at that time, he also had major problems with some of his leaders who had left their post. Some of them had drifted away. Some of them had changed ashrams. He was personally attending to GBC duties in India. He was dealing with managerial affairs around the world. He was writing letters to his disciples. He was approving loans. And he was developing ISKCON, farming communities, temples throughout the world. And speaking at the same time, speaking daily to guests, giving Bhagavatam lectures. And his only time for writing was during the late hours of the night. Prabhupada would rest from 10 o'clock to midnight, and then he would start translating. And Prabhupada, actually, if you really minutely analyze that achievement, it's incomprehensible. It's unfathomable how Srila Prabhupada achieved what he achieved. So on that day, 10th of November 1974, it was complete. And my Guru Maharaj, it was actually completed in Bombay. And my Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Giriraj Swami, was there. And I'd just like to share with you that morning what happened. What happened. So just bear with me. I'm not so good with the IT.
In Juhu, Bombay. My usual practice when Srila Prabhupada was in Bombay was to go to his quarters at the back of Hare Krishna land to accompany him on his morning walk on Juhu Beach. So, and Srila Prabhupada's quarters at the back, on the one side were his quarters, and on the other side, just adjoining, were his staff's quarters. So, as usual, I climbed up the stairs, but this time, quite unusually, both the doors were locked. The door to Srila Prabhupada's quarters and the door to his staff's quarters. So I knocked on both doors and no one answered. I knocked again. And eventually Srila Prabhupada's secretary at the time, Harikesh Prabhu, opened the door to the staff's quarters, and he said that Srila Prabhupada had been up all night translating Sri Caitanya Charitamrita, that he had completed his translation, and that at the end he had dictated the most beautiful glorification of his spiritual master. And Harikesh Prabhu added that Srila Prabhupada was in a very jubilant mood, and he said that we should celebrate by having a feast. Now,
so this was a momentous occasion. Srila Prabhupada completing the translation of Sri Caitanya Charitamrita. And as Maharaj is saying, Srila Prabhupada was jubilant. He was jubilant after 500 years after the appearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Caitanya Charitamrita was now translated into English. So Srila Prabhupada, once it was translated, we can imagine. Srila Prabhupada's desire was, now it needs to be printed, published, and distributed. But there was a problem. What was the problem? The BBT were behind on publishing. Prabhupada had already translated 2 volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam, and they remain unpublished. So in America, the BBT had just lost the head of the BBT. Karanda Prabhu had stepped down. And 24-year-old Rameshwar Das, he became the head of the BBT. And they knew how seriously Srila Prabhupada had taken the mission of his Guru Maharaj and how much he wanted to get these volumes published. So they got new printing presses. They changed how they were working, and they doubled their ability to publish. But Srila Prabhupada was still not very happy. So Prabhupada went to Los Angeles. Los Angeles was the head of the BBT. Prabhupada landed in Los Angeles on the 20th of June, 1975. And when Prabhupada landed, he gave an address. He gave an address to the assembled devotees. And I would like to share with you all what Prabhupada said in his arrival address. It tells us what was Srila Prabhupada's mood when he arrived.
My Guru Maharaj asked me that if you get some money, you print books. So, there was a private meeting talking, some of my important God brothers also there, it was in Radha Kunda. So, Guru Maharaj was speaking to me that since we have got this Bhagavajar and marble temple, there has been so many dissensions. And everyone is thinking, we'll occupy this room or that room, that room. I wish therefore to sell this temple and the marble and print some book. Yes. So I took up this from his mouth, that he is very fond of books. And he told me personally that if you get some money, print books. Therefore I am stressing on this point. Where is book? Where is book? Where is book? So kindly help me. This is my request. Print as many books in as many languages and distribute throughout the whole world.
So Srila Prabhupada arrived in Los Angeles, wanting his disciples to print. It was a big concern of his. 17 volumes unpublished. And Prabhupada says, I am feeling discouraged that I am spending so much time and effort translating, giving the books, but you are not publishing. So the next day, Srila Prabhupada said, the Caitanya Charitamrita is complete, 12 parts, and only 3 parts are published, and now the 5th canto is almost finished. So why these books are not being published? This is our first business. Immediately these pending books, 17 total, must all be published. Why the delay? The US printer's binding is better than Dai Nippon. So some may be printed in the US and some in Japan, but the pending books must be finished in a very short time. When I see so many books pending, it does not encourage me to translate. When I see books printed, I will become encouraged to write more and more. We can talk this over more in Hawaii. So Prabhupada is very dissatisfied, very unhappy. And then on the following day, the 21st of June, 1975, Prabhupada is walking on the beach, Venice Beach in Los Angeles. I was fortunate to go there a few times. It's a place of pilgrimage. So Prabhupada is expressing to the devotees. So what will you do? What will you do? So the devotees said, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, we have got new printing presses. We've got more devotees. We've done this, we've done that. We've brought new technology. Now we can print one book every 2 months. And not only that, Srila Prabhupada, we think if we do 24-hour shifts, we can do one book every month. Then Srila Prabhupada said, as if thinking out aloud and considering it, that means over 1 year. That is not fast enough. So when Prabhupada said that, all of the devotees focused their attention on the two BBT trustees, or the main BBT managers. That was Rameshwar Das and Radha Vallabha Das. And Prabhupada previously had said this, but now he said it for the second time. You have to do all books in 2 months' time, Srila Prabhupada said again. And this time they had heard it clearly. And the two managers were stunned in disbelief. Srila Prabhupada, Rameshwar said, I think that's impossible. Maybe we can go faster. Srila Prabhupada suddenly stopped walking. Planting his cane firmly in the sand, he turned to Rameshwar and said, without anger, but very gravely, impossible is the word found in a fool's dictionary. And Rameshwar Prabhu understood that his spiritual life was on the line. Mukam karoti vachalam pangam langejati kirim yat kripa tamaham vande Sri Guru dinatarinim. It means that by the grace of the spiritual master, the lame can climb mountains, and the dumb can speak eloquent words. That means by the mercy of the spiritual master, there's no such thing as impossible. And when Srila Prabhupada said, impossible is a word in the fool's dictionary, the devotees knew that Prabhupada wanted these books published in 2 months' time. There was no option. It had to be done. Practically speaking, it was an impossible task. I'm not sure if any of y'all are involved in publishing or printing. My Guru Maharaj once told me that to publish one book is probably more difficult than starting and opening a temple because of the effort it takes. And yeah, Srila Prabhupada, and normally it takes a long time, minimum 6 months to a year just to publish one book. And here Srila Prabhupada was asking them to print 17 volumes. But the devotees, considering Srila Prabhupada's position, empowered position, and how he's capable of empowering anyone, they said, yes, Srila Prabhupada, we'll do it. And in this way, the marathon starts. But there were many problems and challenges. So the devotees had to make some conditions, preconditions with Srila Prabhupada. Normally, there's no such thing as disciples making preconditions with the spiritual master. But there are circumstances where that relationship between the spiritual master and the disciple takes on a new face when it comes to service. So the devotees they went to Srila Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, we have some preconditions. Rameshwar said, for the Bengali editing to go smoothly, the editors would have to be able to regularly consult Srila Prabhupada. Immediately, Prabhupada agreed, adding that he was prepared to stay in Los Angeles as long as necessary to ensure that they met the 2-month deadline. So just imagine, Srila Prabhupada had some young, in one sense, relatively inexperienced editors. And all of them were trained to be Sanskrit editors because Bhagavatam was in Sanskrit. And here they are now having to edit a book in Bengali. And part of the precondition was that Srila Prabhupada will stay in Los Angeles and teach all of his Sanskrit editors Bengali. Another condition Rameshwar raised was that the artists would be working as quickly as humanly possible, but the paintings may not be of the best quality. A blind uncle is better than no uncle, Srila Prabhupada said. When Rameshwar mentioned that the artists would have many technical questions, Prabhupada agreed to make time to answer them. He also agreed that photographs of even places connected with Caitanya Leela could be used to supplement the paintings. I'll talk a bit about that later. So after meeting with Srila Prabhupada, Rameshwar and Radha Vallabh felt that they had a chance. They left Srila Prabhupada's room, running down the stairs. The marathon was on. So the scale of what was to be achieved was really beyond description. 17 volumes in 2 months. That was like practically like they were saying it was like one book every 3 days. So I'll now just speak briefly about some details about how this was achieved. And the underlying principle here is this. This is the underlying principle is the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, and the desire of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srila Prabhupada to have this particular literature come to the West becomes so evident, so evident. So where shall we start? So the first thing when you print a book is you've got to find a printer. So how do you find a printer to print 340,000 hardbound volumes in 2 months? And Rameshwar Prabhu said, so one of the miracles of this marathon is how do you get a major printer that has relationships with every major publishing company in America and with major authors in America to suddenly stop their committed schedule to print these books for all of these publishing houses and instead put us at the front of the line when they've never done anything with us before. So there were 2 big printers in America. One was Kingsport Press, and the other was Donnelly Printers. So these printers, all of the big publishers who publish books for big authors, they were the main printers. They were the main printers. So you can imagine in America being the foremost country in the world, with some of the biggest, most respected and renowned publishers in the world, representing some of the most renowned authors in the world, using these 2 printing companies. Donnelly Press was a bit bigger, but Kingsport was the biggest in terms of hardbound books. So how does a charity with no previous relationship with any of these printers get these printers to stop work for any of the big clients, big publishers, publishing for big authors, and take up the printing in 2 months of 340,000 volumes. Practically, it's impossible. Not a chance that any of these printers would do it. Dai Nippon, who had printed Prabhupada's other books in Japan, they were no longer could do it because of the oil embargo, because of the price of printing. It was not possible. And Prabhupada was asked whether they could look for some other printers. Prabhupada was not happy because he had an allegiance to a company like Dai Nippon who helped him print his first books. Anyway, a 24-year-old who's very inexperienced, not has any experience with dealing with big printers, goes and meet Kingsport Press and tells them, we want you to stop printing for anybody else and for 2 months only print our literature. And what does the director of Kingsport Press say? Fine, we'll do it. That was the first miracle. Practically impossible. They said they will do it. So that was the first miracle. The second miracle is to print 340,000 hardbound volumes in 2 months. How much of paper do you need? You need trainloads and trainloads and trainloads of paper. And there are many different organizations vying for the outputs of the paper mill. And the devotees go to the paper mill and say, we want you to dedicate practically all of your outputs from the paper mill to our publishing. And what does the paper mill say? Yes, we'll do it. We'll do it. It's a miracle. Such things never happen in the normal world, especially when a 24-year-old, inexperienced BB trustee, young, goes and negotiates. Yeah, we see that there's divine arrangement taking place. And then there's other logistics. The artwork. They need to do 100 paintings in 2 months. Any of you are artists? I know my daughter is an artist. Sometimes she does some paintings, and I see how it takes at least a week, hours on hours per day it would take just to do one painting. And yeah, the BBT trustees, painters had to do 100 paintings in 2 months. And these paintings, these devotees had not read Caitanya Charitamrita. And they were going to have to paint the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They wanted to know what color dhoti does this devotee use. Should they paint him with a mustache or a beard? Is he clean shaven? What is his complexion? There were hundreds and hundreds of questions that they had just to do one painting. And Srila Prabhupada had to travel 1 month. Although he said he'll stay in Los Angeles, he traveled. He was in India. And the devotees would write, handwrite, loads and loads of questions, put it in the post. It would take 10 days to reach where Srila Prabhupada was, minimum. And then Prabhupada would write the reply. And then 10 days for it to return. And then the artist they have to consider and paint. There was no email. There was no WhatsApp. Everything was snail mail. And you had to do 100 paintings. And again, we see another miracle. The devotees are doing Harinam Sankirtan in Venice Beach. And then suddenly, from nowhere, someone comes, a young gentleman, comes and meets the devotees. He is attracted by the kirtan. and he wants to go with the devotees back to the temple and live in the temple. First time meeting them on Harinam. And while they're driving back to the temple, they ask him, so what do you do? And he says, I am an artist. They take him back to the temple. They call Rameshwar. They said, we found an artist for you. And he's not just any artist. He has this amazing capacity to do landscape. So what he does is, for all of these paintings, he does all of the background landscaping. And one devotee would come and he would paint a little bit. And he would fall on his easel and fall asleep. And then they'll bring another painter would come and finish. That is unheard of. No artist ever likes another artist coming and even suggesting what the artwork should be. But yet we had 3-4 devotees working on one painting. And if you look at the paintings in Sri Caitanya Charitamrita, they all look perfect. They all look perfect. And then they would achieve. But still, it was not going fast enough to meet the 2-month deadline. So they go to Srila Prabhupada and say, Srila Prabhupada, instead of painting these pastime places, what if we go there and take photographs? And Prabhupada says, fine. Oh, sorry, before I finish that. So it takes 3 weeks for the letter to go. Then they call Srila Prabhupada and say, Prabhupada, this is not working. We have to speak to you on the phone. And those who have studied Srila Prabhupada's life, they know that Srila Prabhupada was not very much liking to speak on the phone. But anyway, Srila Prabhupada agreed. And in this way, the artist would speak with Srila Prabhupada and they would progress. And then there was the photography. They sent one devotee, they bought him a ticket, and he was going around taking films. And there was no such thing as digital photography. He would take his photographs, he would put the photographs in an envelope and air freight them back to Los Angeles and make notes what each photograph was. So you can imagine how difficult the task was. So anyway, the typesetting was carrying on, 24-hour marathons. And to print 340,000 books, each book being different. If you print the same book 340,000 times, it's not so difficult. But where you got a different book every 3 days, so many aspects of the printing process has to change. And all of that was happening. And within this 2 months, everyone became completely and utterly immersed in this task of publishing Sri Caitanya Charitamrita. And by the empowerment of Srila Prabhupada and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in 2 weeks, the entire 17 volumes was finished. It was published. And it was one of the greatest victories of the Krishna consciousness movement. And this would be, for the next 10,000 years, this will be an event that is spoken about time and time again, where we see the mercy and the desire of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the plan of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu being manifest, the Shakti that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu can invest in the devotees, in Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada reinvest that in his disciples. We see how all of this is possible by the special mercy of Guru and Gauranga. So the next time we take our Sri Caitanya Charitamrita, and it's so unique, the fonts, the Bengali. And these books, when it got printed, one thing I forgot to say, when the devotees were wanting to print they went to Srila Prabhupada and they asked Srila Prabhupada, how many copies shall they print? And that time, there were a few thousand disciples in ISKCON. So the devotees were thinking that this Sri Caitanya Charitamrita, it is only for the devotees. So they asked Srila Prabhupada, how many copies shall they print? And Prabhupada said, 20,000. And the devotee said, 20,000? And Prabhupada said, yes, this book is for everyone. This book is for everyone, so minimum 20,000 you shall print. And many scholars, devotees went and distributed these books in libraries. Renowned scholars from Oxford University and other great educational institutions, they wrote some really amazing reviews about this publication. And I actually have 2 reviews here, which maybe I'll share with you. It was this is by Dr. O.B.L. Kapoor. It is a remarkable document of great historical and sociological importance, giving a picturesque presentation of the socio-religious climate in India of Sri Chaitanya's times and the far-reaching social and religious changes wrought by him. As a literary piece, it is regarded as a work of great merit, having no parallel in the whole of Bengali literature. As a religious text, its sanctity is comparable to that of the Bhagavad Gita. This English edition, translated by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, is superb. It contains the original Sanskrit and Bengali verses with their English transliteration, synonyms, and elaborate purports, easily bearing testimony to the author's profound knowledge of the subject. And this is by Dr. J. Bruce Long from Cornell University. The appearance of an English translation of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's Sri Caitanya Charitamrita by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami is a cause for celebration among scholars in Indian studies and lay people seeking to enrich their knowledge of Indian spirituality. It will fill a most serious lacuna in our libraries and in our courses on the religious traditions of India. For the first time, we possess a readily accessible edition for the great religious classic that will provide opportunities for scholars in Indian literature and followers of the Krishna consciousness tradition alike to compare the original text with a modern English translation and become acquainted with the deeper spiritual meaning of this work through the learned commentary of Sri Bhaktivedanta. These exquisitely wrought volumes will be a welcome addition to the libraries of all persons who are committed to the study of Indian spirituality and religious literature, whether their interests are sparked by the motivation of the scholar, the devotee, or the general reader. And when Srila Prabhupada saw these scholars' appreciation, it gave him great joy. So, devotees, I just summarized this. If you go to YouTube and you type GBC SPT, Sri Caitanya Charitamrita Publishing, you can see and hear the direct words and an account and the narration of Rameshwar Prabhu of this great literature. We are Gaudiya Vaishnavas. We understand that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes are still currently taking place. Just like any person likes to know if they come from a rich heritage, likes to know more about their tradition and heritage, we in the same way we should try to know more. So I'll stop here. I will take any questions, comments, or reflections that anyone may have. Hare Krishna, Govinda Gopi Mataji, you'd like to add anything or say anything? You are muted, Mataji.
We are so grateful for for your class today. You explained a lot on Srila Prabhupada mission and how Prabhupada undergo all kind of stress, all the job all done by him. Actually it's all Srila Prabhupada mission that we are here today, able to stay together in a house, in one house with all people doing reading Krishna, Caitanya Charitamrita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. Without Prabhupada, we are all lost in this ocean of science. We thank you so much for sharing all your Leela, Srila Prabhupada Leela, and on all the great literature. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know you're very much involved in distributing Srila Prabhupada's books in Milton Keynes.
Okay. Thank you. We are
And,
just doing our service. If Prabhupada can do so much, we should do a little bit for Prabhupada and Guru Gauranga. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. For this Caitanya Charitamrita marathon, we're trying to distribute 300 sets. Prabhupada wanted one in every home. It's just a drop in the ocean. If everyone does a little bit, then it'll be a wonderful service to Srila Prabhupada.
Prabhu, I've got 3 sets of Srimad Bhagavatam, 1 set of Charamita, and hundreds of Bhagavad Gita for our distribution.
Wonderful. All glories to your service. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Emma Mataji, you wrote a comment there. Are you in a position to want to speak it, or you're more comfortable with it being written?
Prabhuji, if you can read it, it will be nice. Thank you.
Okay. So Emma
Yes,
Mataji has written something very nice here. Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you for a very inspiring, nourishing class. Just wanted to share my recent realization. As part of my transfer service, I've been given a humbling service of putting Srila Prabhupada to rest for the evening. As I prepare Srila Prabhupada, I have to give a mic.
A mic in his hand when we prepare him for the evening.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. So, yeah, okay, I understand now. A mic in his hand. This brings to life how much endeavor Srila Prabhupada put into giving us these very precious books, especially the Caitanya Charitamrita. He stayed all night to give us this nectar. All we have to do is buy it now and read it and embrace the spirit in which he gave us these books. He gave so much to be grateful for. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Prabhupada. Jai.
Wonderful realization. Jai.
Jai.
I just want to say something about Emma Mataji. She's probably distributed more Caitanya Charitamrita sets during this marathon than anyone else.
Jai.
She simply, whoever she meets, she tells them about Sri Caitanya Charitamrita. And I've been asking her to do a little podcast for us, by which we can hear how she does it, what she says, and how she approaches people. And Emma Mataji said she's going to do it one of these days. So thank you, Emma Mataji, for your wonderful service in distribution. Anyone else has any realizations, comments, or reflections from today's session? Any comments? We have one disciple of Srila Prabhupada, Karuna Dakshayi Vishnu Prabhu, who has joined us today. We're grateful, and I'm humbled to be speaking in his presence because he had lots of personal association with Srila Prabhupada. Prabhu, would you like to say anything or share any of your own realization?
Yes, I would like to thank you very much for your wonderful, wonderful class. I really enjoyed it. I took 1.5 pages of notes of everything you said. And it's so wonderful just listening to you that I'm overjoyed. I really feel really, very blessed to be able to listen to your wonderful class. And if I can be of some service, I would be very grateful to be engaged in distributing Caitanya Charitamritas, and particularly my real desire is to, if possible, at some point in time, if we can distribute the original 17-volume set, then I think Srila Prabhupada will be very, very pleased with you and with all the devotees. It will be the most wonderful blessing that it will be the rejoice, recoming, reunion of so many of our God brothers and sisters. And so it's just a humble request at this point.
Certainly, Prabhu, if you give us your blessings, I'm sure we'll get closer towards achieving that. I also like to see the multi-volume set. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a comment here by Indira Mataji. It says, Prabhuji, I'm a bit confused that it is said Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is reincarnation of Krishna. But yesterday was said Mahaprabhu has come as Radharani to spread the glories. Can you explain this, please? Yes, Mataji, sure. Firstly, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not an incarnation of Krishna. He is Krishna. Once Srila Prabhupada was talking to some guests, and while he was talking to some guests, he was explaining to them about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And, the guests were struggling a bit to understand what Srila Prabhupada was saying. And at one point, one of the disciples said to the guest, Mahaprabhu is incarnation of Krishna. And immediately Prabhupada stopped him and said, not incarnation. He is Krishna himself. Krishna Vanam Tvisha Krishna Sangha Pangashta Parshadam. That's a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam. He is Krishna himself, but he's not blackish like Krishna. He is Krishna in the mood of Srimati Radharani. So therefore, Radharani's color is golden. So there Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is golden. He is the combined form of Radha and Krishna. That one became two, and then the two again became one, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself in the mood of Srimati Radharani, or a combined form of Radha and Krishna. Does that answer your question? There's a deep science and there's lots of scriptural evidence. If you read the introduction to Sri Caitanya Charitamrita, Mataji, Srila Prabhupada gives an absolutely brilliant explanation of this very deep subject matter in the introduction. So I would appeal, if you don't have a set, you can get one. If you're not in a position to get a set for yourself, you'd like us to give you a sponsored set, we can also arrange for that. Or if you want to read it online, you can also read it online on vedabase.io. But you can read that. Beautiful.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank
Hare
you. That explains it. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Any other reflections, comments, or questions by anyone?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Dhanavad Pranam. My name is Surya. Sorry, I'm using my wife's phone. The just a small question, Prabhuji. For some reason, like when I listen to Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, or Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, somehow Chaitanya Charitamrita is so inspiring that I feel like that's what we want to do, chant all the time, or be like going to the temple in the daytime, like Sri Chaitanya did, and do chanting and kirtan in the evening, and want to hear more and more Chaitanya Charitamrita rather than other scriptures. I don't know why it's happening, but just maybe because I like chanting or what, but what do we do in this circumstance? Is it normal, and what should I do? Because then we say for initiation and all, we need to know the Bhagavad Gita, pass Bhakti Shastri, and also it's challenging in that way as well.
You can do both, Prabhu.
Oh.
I actually read Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita simultaneously while I was reading Srimad Bhagavatam and also teaching Bhagavad Gita. So there's no hard and fast rules. Srila Prabhupada is also on record and saying, yes, read Sri Caitanya Charitamrita. There's, although, there is the normal saying, and, you should read Bhagavad Gita, foundational study, then Srimad Bhagavatam, and then Caitanya Charitamrita. There are other times clearly where Srila Prabhupada said, yes, you can read. When Srila Prabhupada wanted this book to be printed in 20,000 copies and to be distributed to any person, even on the street. Even in America now, they distribute Caitanya Charitamrita on the street, the entire set. So in one sense, there's no hard and fast rules. You can read wherever your heart takes you, you can. But also we are in an institution, and that institution sometimes has their own rules. So if you want to take initiation, you still have to do the Guru-disciple course and do Bhakti Shastri. But you can still, while doing Bhakti Shastri, read Sri Caitanya Charitamrita. Nobody can stop you. Nobody can stop you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Very helpful. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay, we've gone somewhat over time today. So tomorrow we have a very interesting topic. We have Mukunda Hari Prabhu, who is such a distinguished speaker, such a wonderful devotee. He'll be speaking on Vaishnava relationships as shown in the Sri Caitanya Charitamrita. Srila Prabhupada said, Krishna consciousness is 90% association. We should understand what association means, how to take association, how to give association, and how to behave properly in the association of Vaishnavas. And all of that was demonstrated in the most beautiful way in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. So that Mukunda Hari Prabhu will share with us tomorrow. Please don't miss that session. Tell others about it. And please also, we've got 5 days left since Gaur Purnima to take, sponsor, or tell people about Sri Caitanya Charitamrita. That's a great mission we've got. Hare Krishna. All glories to your service, and thank you for attending. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva patitinam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhupada Vrinda
Hare
ki
Krishna,
jai.
Prabhuji. Thank you so
Jai
much.
Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare
Thank you.
Krishna,
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna.